hello, everybody. This is really exciting. I've been telling people about this all day, actually, and I was just like, hey, guys, like, come on, like, we've got to get to this tech conference. It's so much more than just blockchain. I love how this is all catered around investing and really building the future, which is really what people need to be focusing on, especially right now. So hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm moving, switching studios, so we rigged our setup today, but I did not want to miss out on this, and especially not a chance to talk with Mitch and Dr. Lewis. Guys, I looked up both of you, and I'm really impressed. I have a lot that I'm looking to even just learn through speaking with both of you about your paths, but ultimately, I really want to cater this kind of with like a beginning and an end today, because will blockchain change the world? I don't know. I think that that's like a really fair question to debate and discuss. Like, is it even going to have that opportunity to change the world? So you two guys are two featured guests for this segment. Mitch and Dr. Lewis are really deep in the investment game, and they understand technology, where it's going, where this has been developing. So I would love to give them both a chance to introduce themselves. Mitch, if we could start with you, and then we will move to Dr. Lewis. Feel free to spend some time just prefacing the audience and me as well on where you came from and how did you even end up in Web3 and in this space as an investor. Would love to hear your story. Feel free to kick us off.
Yeah, sure. Thanks so much for that. And, really excited to be here. So yeah, my name is Mitch Mechigian. I'm a partner at blockchain Coinvestors. And blockchain Coinvestors are really founded on the principle that all of the world's commerce is digitalizing. So that includes the assets, monies, and commodities. And what that really meant for us from a strategy perspective was that we started with the fund of funds. We wanted to capture, at least in some small way, all of the emerging unicorns in the space and really position ourselves for that horizontal shift. So that first fund of funds, which we launched, is now the world's leading fund of funds in its category, according to Preqin and PitchBook. We've now invested in more than 45 funds as LPs across 25 managers. And so that fund of funds really gives us that platform and basis that we think makes us some of the most connected investors in the space. We're talking to GPs, getting their portfolio data. And then what we do is we use that information and that connectivity to invest directly onto the cap table through two main ways. The first of which is our early stage token fund. And the second of which, where I really spend most of my time, is our mid-stage growth fund and our SPV program. So we really focus on investing, starting that series A and B. And so that gives us the full life cycle. So we're indirectly invested from the early stage and then invest directly onto the cap table, series A, B, C. And so my background, I'm a former investment banker, a reformed investment banker, as I like to say. I started at Morgan Stanley in New York in equity capital markets, taking companies public, transferred to London, where I currently live. Worked in Canary Wharf here in London in the M&A practice. And my road to Web3 or blockchain was actually by way of academia. So I left investment banking, went to London School of Economics to do a political economy master's, and really centered my research around blockchain. And what I found was interesting at the time was that you saw this big digression or really dispersion of regulatory outcomes between countries of blockchain. I think we're continuing to see this today. And so I really focused on looking at the differences, why one country would maybe ban blockchain, why another country maybe embrace it, as you've seen, and we're seeing this play out still. And at that time, while I was a full-time student, got connected to Matthew and Allison, who are the wonderful founders of blockchain Coinvestors, and they actually asked me to come on as a research part-time employee. And for those of you in the crowd who may know Matthew, who's very big supporter of Link 2, he can be quite convincing. And so he actually convinced me to come on full-time after I graduated, and I've been full-time ever since, and really enjoying it. So never really expected to be venture capitalist in blockchain, really was looking at it from an academic angle, but I'm really glad I'm here and excited to be a part of the space.
No, that's awesome. Great summarization of just how you got here. So much more to talk about. We're going to come back. I've got great questions to ask you and Dr. Lewis as well. Dr. Lewis, thanks so much for being here. Appreciate the opportunity. How the heck did you end up in Web3 as an investor? Let's hear this one.
Mine is a bit more crooked in terms of the path I took. I'll tell you that I came from a family of entrepreneurs, 4 generations in land development. In all those generations, I am the only physician. I kind of joke that I was a huge disappointment to these people because we were raising entrepreneurs. That's what we were doing. So whenever I decided to go to medical school, and I'm a critical care physician, I'm a pediatric anesthesiologist. I don't clinically practice any longer. I'm full in on VC, but it does beg the question how I got there. And really the answer is you never get an entrepreneurial lifestyle out of your blood. It doesn't matter how regulated an industry you're in. I just don't think you ever get away from that. And that's what happened to me. I ultimately married a businessman who was in tech. And what that did was just kind of fuel the entrepreneurial fire in me. He had an M&A, a tech M&A, and I retired from clinical practice at the same time, and we decided to start working together. But what really, to put everything in perspective, is that for 20 years, we were investing in digital assets. And what I mean when I say digital assets, 3 and 4 letter .coms, everything we could get our hands on that made any sense. I feel like I carried GoDaddy on my back for like the first 2 or 3 years. We love things like sporting personal seat licenses, anything that is digital that is also transactionable. And so when crypto/blockchain came into the conversation, we looked at it and we said, this is really just the next iteration of technology. This makes so much sense. This is a continuation of what we've been doing for the last 20 years. So we had been working with, I personally was working with physicians that were coming out of clinical practice, and my partner/husband was working with primarily startups. And we would always get to the same point and we would say, we've run out of money. The on-ramp just isn't there. And they would be young founders who really thought they couldn't fail and didn't need the kind of backing that they really needed. And it could be a really frustrating space. So about a year ago, we started talking more about what it would look like to bring smart capital to these folks. So by that, I mean the check, I mean the investment, but I also mean the experience and the background that we had in starting and building and supporting companies all throughout the course of our lives. Blockchain was just the most obvious way to go because it was a continuation of what we had been doing. And so, about a year ago, we launched Crypto VCF and our Blockchain Opportunity Fund. And this is what brings us here today in this incredibly exciting and vibrant and risky market.
So well said by both of you. Thank you for those just good encompassing answers on how you got started. And very interesting. I love that you led that, Dr. Lewis, to go, well, mine was a little crooked, but yeah, I feel like none of this is very traditional in any sense whatsoever. But interesting point that you also mentioned that this just seems like the next iteration of tech. I want to come back to that. I think that kind of breaking down that Web 2, Web 3 boundary into just a web playing field is definitely a topic that really coincides with blockchain technology. So, all right, let's move to some questions. Oh my gosh, well, let me know when we're running out of time, if you would please, somebody, because this could get into a really great discussion. I want to start first with this. So obviously, this is briefed right now, this segment, will blockchain change the world? But my question, and we'll go back to you, Mitch, is can blockchain change the world? And I'm not saying whether I disagree or agree with that, but can it truly, in your opinion, change the entire world? Because that's asking a lot. That's asking a lot of something.
I think it just depends where you set the bar. But for me, the answer is absolutely yes. I mean, I think if you look at the way Web 1 and Web 2 changed the world, right, it's the digitalization of information. And when it was happening, we really didn't know what the kind of knock-on effects would be and where the effects would be 20 years later. Like in 1990, no one could have predicted Uber, right? So these things take some time to develop. And that's where I think we are with blockchain technology, right? What blockchain technology is the first time you can really have a truly digital commerce, right? Truly digital peer-to-peer value transfer, first and foremost with Bitcoin, right? A digital version of cash. But also, I think the implications are much broader, right? It's digital interaction, in a more broader sense, in a peer-to-peer manner. with implications being things you may have heard of, such as the metaverse, such as gaming, things that are going to take, in my view, a long time to develop, that are developing right now, that people are investing in. There's a lot of exciting things going on. But I think even if we don't get there, just that digital transfer of value, that ability to truly interact in an economic sense on the internet in a peer-to-peer manner, has massive and monstrous implications. Not monstrous, but enormous implications for society. And we don't know exactly where that all will shake out in the next 20 years. But if I were to bet, I think that it would truly change the world, at least the way in the economic world.
Funny you'd switch from the word monstrous because you didn't want to paint it in a bad light, but I felt like that was a really fitting word, because this is all, the blockchain is a monstrosity that like you can't even control it, and it's like a hydra. Every time you cut off a head, another one comes out, and that's all I'm seeing, and I mean that in a good way. I see it developing. It might get messier and more difficult to control, but at the same time, way more utility, way more power, way more just need, way more use and application, really. Dr. Lewis, how do you feel? Do you feel that blockchain really can change the world as well?
Well, blockchain is innovation. And anytime you have innovation, I think it's inevitable that you're going to have change. It's studied and it's believed that we only use about 20% of our brain power throughout the course of our lives. So when I think about that, I say to myself, this is a situation where we're expanding our brains. There are things that are occurring now in our lives that we didn't even know were possible. And as it relates to the human brain, I think that is what's going on here. We are expanding our brain power. We are expanding our cognition. I don't know how innovation can ever be bad. When you go out to weed your garden and you pull the first weed, and the next thing you know, 4 hours are gone and you have weeded your entire garden. That is how I see blockchain. We are just getting started. We've just pulled our first weed, and it will get messier before it gets better. But that's incredibly exciting.
And Ryan, before you
go ahead. No, go ahead, Mitch.
Words you said, which I love the word you used, which is inevitable. And we say that all the time. What we say is that digital is inevitable. And I think with these technologies, it's like you can't really go backwards. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. It's like Bitcoin is open source code that anyone with a laptop anywhere in the world can run. Even if all of the governments around the world coordinated to try to ban it, it would be very difficult to put out. And a good example of that is actually torrenting or file sharing, which is illegal, in basically every country. But because it's like whack-a-mole, because any person with a laptop or a phone can plug in and become part of a decentralized file sharing network, it's incredibly difficult to kind of quell. And I think that inevitability is exactly right? It's that you have this blockchain technology that is a true innovation, and you can't really go backwards, not with the internet, not with digital, and it's only going to move forwards. So I completely agree.
No, that's so well said by both of you. The inevitability of this is it's remarkable, because when you think about it, you're right. It's like you can't put the genie back in the lamp anymore. Like, he's out. Like, that's it. It's like, oh no, Bitcoin is here. What do we do? Even if we burn it all down, there's still going to be some node somewhere, and it's going to exist. Mitch, let's keep it with you, and we'll go right back to Dr. Lewis. So what are some of your personal favorite advancements that blockchain provides for the world, or just the people who are using the technology as of right now? And I say that a little bit more condensed because there's literally hundreds, if not thousands of advantages I'm sure you could get into. But what are just some of the noteworthy ones or your personal favorites? And let's start there, and then we'll see what Dr. Lewis has to say.
Sure, and that's exactly right. There are absolutely dozens of use cases. I mean, the ones I like to focus on maybe to start with are the ones that are working today. And that, I think, is first and foremost with payments. And I think that this is really an important issue because payments, for many of us in the developed world, is not really a big issue, right? You have Venmo, you have credit cards. But for many people in the global South, many people who are not financialized, payments is a big deal, right? So the actual average cost, according to the World Bank, for a transaction internationally, I think, is 6%. And that's blended with all of the like super cheap transactions happening, US to UK, US to Canada, things like that. So if you're looking at sending money to Nigeria, to Cameroon, to countries, in Asia or between those countries, the costs are actually stupendous. And this affects people, really on a basic level. This affects all of us. And to me, blockchain technology already is the better way of doing this. And so I mentioned that I got into blockchain via academia. Really, the path that led me there was I was looking at the financial crisis in Venezuela, this most recent one. And I found it super interesting that there are a high number of people using Bitcoin as a vehicle currency. A vehicle currency is a currency that you use to get to other currencies. So basically you had, the diaspora working in other countries, earning in that local currency, maybe it's in dollars, sending, converting their dollars to Bitcoin, sending their Bitcoin into Venezuela, converting that into bolivars, and then spending that. And, this is more than 5 years ago. And I thought that was just absolutely fascinating. And if you look at, Chain Analysis Global Adoption Index, there's a very high degree of correlation between countries with high inflation, countries with undeveloped financial markets, countries with strict financial controls, where you're seeing the most adoption. It's in places like Argentina, it's in places like Nigeria. And so what really excites me, and this is an investable asset class, right? So we just closed an investment into a company called Yellow Card, which is the leading, exchange on the African continent. And the number one cryptocurrency used on Yellow Card is actually USDC, right? It's not Bitcoin. It's actually people wanting to get dollars to use payments in their everyday life. And this is really sticky. And so I've been going for a while, so I'll pause just a minute. But if you look on, the data right now, November was the highest month ever for transaction volume in stablecoins, over $1 trillion in November, in the middle of a bear market, right? So this is something that is working today, that has, obviously has product market fit. That's basically created like a euro dollar system, which is like a phrase for when dollars are used in other countries, but it's kind of like an international euro dollar system. And to me, that is like, is absolutely beautiful application of blockchain in its simplest sense.
No, I think that that's a really important part. I'm glad that you even just brought up the DeFi portion of the whole thing, and not just decentralized finance, but like how they're using it as a vehicle currency and everything. It's something I can relate to as well. You bring up the stable coins. We do an Expoverse daily show every day, and I just go on Twitter Spaces and I go through all the crypto market caps, and I was looking, man. Whew, they have so much money in stable coins right now. It's crazy. Like, especially compared to other cryptos, like, like out of those top 5, like these stable coins have got volume in them. So it's really interesting. I guess there's probably a lot of reason for that utility wise, but also just good to see that there's sustainability there. Dr. Lewis, I know that we just covered most of what blockchain crypto does with, the finance side, but do you have any other unique thoughts on other advantages that it provides that you'd want to continue to talk on?
Oh, absolutely. First, I want to say that I am so hopeful about the growth and stability of payment platforms, because it is such a necessary utility for and underdeveloped countries. We do. I mean, you're right, Mitch. We just take it for granted. We really, really take it for granted, and we shouldn't be. And that should be one of the things that we're putting a significant amount of our resources and efforts into, is developing these, because there is such a big give back component when it comes to payment platforms in this industry. But to move a step further, I'm super excited about what blockchain means for the gaming industry, because I believe that gaming is going to be the way we bring the general populace into Web3 in the most frictionless fashion. Gaming, what's going on in gaming right now is incredible. That's one of the things. The second thing is that there is use case functionality for things like NFTs, and that deal with data transfer and data privacy, data security issues. We see that a lot in healthcare. And that is one of the things where I see NFTs transitioning in a really positive way, going from, an ape or a monkey to a way to manage your healthcare records. And, make no mistake, everyone on this planet has a healthcare history that needs to be managed, because the day you're born, you start developing one. So a use case in healthcare and med tech is also something that I'm really looking forward to, and I think is going to be one of the paramount advancements in the blockchain space.
Oh my God, sorry, I had one of the polls popped up. Guys, make sure you're answering these poll questions that pop up. I just had one, I was clicking out of it so I could unmute, making sure I'm quiet here so we're hearing from our speakers. Guys, so far, I just want to say thanks again. I'm Kenton from the Expoverse team, and we've partnered with Link2, great friends of ours. So thank you for this opportunity to let me be here to talk to Dr. Lewis and Mitch. These answers are fantastic. It's funny when I hear things and they get me thinking too much. I'm like, oh my God, now I just want to have this conversation. But we're going to not skip. We're going to stick to the script. We have some great points we still want to bring up. Again, we are talking about how blockchain can and will change the world, because this really is sounding inevitable. Dr. Lewis, let's stick with you for this one, and then we'll throw it back to Mitch. You can take this as you want as a question, but I thought this was a good one. How many blockchains is it going to take to change the world? Is it going to be 1? Is it going to be 2? Is it going to be 7, 43, 100? How many blockchains are going to need to exist? Or how few blockchains do you think we'll actually need in the long run? Feel free to take this in whatever direction you'd like.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And the answer is, who knows? Really, who knows what it'll take? What we do know is that consolidation is inevitable. And so everything you see out there will become fewer than it is now. You know, mergers are inevitable. So I just think time will tell on this one. I wish I could give you a more clear and concise answer, but fewer than we have now, because consolidation will happen.
Sorry, before we move right over to you, Mitch, when you say consolidation, just to elaborate on that for me and the audience, what exactly is meant by that? You feel that blockchains will fuse together or disapparate and disappear? What type of consolidation here?
Both, honestly, both will happen. Consolidation, I mean, technically means coming together, right? So individual unique blockchains will come together to work in parallel or work simultaneously. But, you know, as is the case with any form of business, there will always be scenarios where just things fall to the side. They lose funding, they lose momentum, they lose workers. There will be fewer. And when I say consolidation could be a really good thing, but there are also aspects of consolidation that can be really painful if you're not in the roll up.
I saw someone comment and they said interoperability is key. Yeah, I agree. I think that that's all part of this too.
Absolutely.
Mitch, what are your thoughts? Are you banking on just Bitcoin? Are you banking on them and ETH? You think we're going to see all of CoinMarketCap's blockchains make it? What are your thoughts? I'm very curious as to what
I would add, I mean, I want to try to answer the question directly, but I love what Elizabeth said. I would say I would modify. I would say there'll be fewer good ones, fewer good blockchains. The incentive to launch new blockchains is incredibly high. So you're seeing new layer ones all the time, because VCs, right, have this model where they can invest early and then get the hype and then sell the tokens, right? It's a way to get liquid earlier in the venture capital model. And so I think we're going to continue to see blockchains launched, but I agree there will be fewer good ones. Now trying to answer the question directly, this is open for debate, and this is one of the most, I would say, exciting and innovative areas in blockchain is actually at the infrastructure layer. And so you have, obviously, you have the Bitcoin maximalists, but then you have the modular blockchain thesis, which kind of goes to what Elizabeth was saying, where you actually will see blockchains be modular and stick together, whether that's, and basically what they do is they would split the function of a blockchain. So for example, Ethereum, you may have heard of rollups, right? We actually take the execution off the main chain and it really happens on a side chain. Side chain is not the right word, but a rollup chain. And then with ultimate settlement down on the Ethereum chain. And so that's one thesis. Some other people are proposing what's called the app chain thesis, where each specific app may spin out its own blockchain. That's very actually prescient in gaming, that you could have, individual apps, whatever the use case is, get to pull the levers of the blockchain to kind of tailor it to their individual needs. Maybe you don't need as much decentralization and security, you want more speed. Maybe you really care about security, you're a big financial institution, you don't care about speed. And so this is a super hot area for debate. Celestia is kind of a prominent kind of layer 0 blockchain, which is just the data availability layer. I mean, they did their seed round at $1 billion valuation. So this is getting a lot of interest. So sorry, this is a long roundabout way of answering the question, but I will try to answer directly. I would bet that if I were to define blockchain as the ultimate security layer, I would say that I would expect there to be, I don't know, fewer than 10 good, very secure, very decentralized blockchain. I don't think there'll be hundreds, but there will be many more kind of in the upper layers doing quick things, ultimately settling down to the bottom layer. Does that answer?
Okay, one follow-up for this. No, this is interesting. And now that I know that you and Dr. Lewis are both you both see gaming as a huge vehicle for mass adoption, obviously. It sounds like the same sentiment, at least. I wanted to ask this. So you're talking about all these different blockchains, basically, but you're not saying it's going to be this, grotesque amount where it's like, oh my God, they're everywhere. They're falling from the skies. It would be things like Star Wars blockchain would run Star Wars games, let's say. And then you might have your Fortnite blockchain, your Fortnite coin. And maybe you'll have your Call of Duty blockchain, your COD coin. So my question, though, is I already know it because I was a gamer. A lot of my friends are gamers. Basically, all the gamer friends I have think that NFTs are dumb. They still don't understand the whole unique value thing. And no matter how many times you explain it, they're really led to think that it's not needed and it's more dangerous for their ecosystem. So it makes sense, but ultimately, what are they going to be doing for all this needed interoperability? Because there's no way people are going to convert their COD coin to their Fortnite coin to go and buy the skin just because they don't have enough money because they spent too much money in the Disney Plus store. Do you see what I'm getting at here? So how is that even going to asphyxiate itself into a manageable way for a 13-year-old, not even a 13-year-old, an 8-year-old to go and do this? Because that is the future we're moving towards. I'm pretty sure, at least.
Yeah, well, the short answer is that it's complicated, and the long answer is that, I mean, the reality is, in order to, let's say you had a gun that's an NFT in Call of Duty and you want to shoot it in Halo, that's a non-trivial computer science problem that I don't think we're actually very close to solving. Maybe Elizabeth has different views and we're closer than we think, but to take an NFT in one game that's usable and use it in another game, that could be, very difficult. What I'm talking about is that you may have games, so Splinterlands is a very popular game. It's one of the most famous games. That game allows you to use Ethereum. They've wrapped tokens to move on other blockchains, but ultimately that game runs on a gasless blockchain because they have literally billions of transactions. And it's a card-based game, kind of like Magic the Gathering. So everything you do is a transaction. Every card is an NFT. So literally, in one match, you might have 1,000 blockchain transactions, and so you just can't have gas, right? So that game needs a gasless based blockchain, more or less, to function, or it would just be too prohibitively expensive. So that game might choose a certain blockchain, or in something like the Cosmos ecosystem, spin up, kind of a related, kind of a blockchain, if that makes sense. Sorry that.
No, it was a great answer. Dr. Lewis, I want to give you a minute to reply to that, only because I know this is a subject that might interest you, and then we'll go right back to questions. But I thought this was definitely something to speak on, because you did say yourself, you said that this might be a real sign for onboarding the masses is video games. So anything you want to add here to what Mitch is already saying?
Yeah, I'll take the perspective of less technical, and I will say the thing that runs video games for the current demographic that play video games is peer pressure. And that means that you can show off what you've earned, what you're using, what you possess. And to be able to do that in different gaming environments is going to be very important. And that's why the interoperability in gaming, in blockchain, really matters. It's really just a peer pressure scenario. I've got more than my friends. He's got more than I do. How do I get what he has and use it in this other game? That, to me, I'm looking at the marketing side of it, where Mitch is looking more at the technical side of it. And so I think, both are really important, and both are going to drive the market.
And I would just add, Ryan.
Yeah, go ahead. I'm just going to say that in a couple of sessions, we're actually going to have a gaming panel run by, that panel is full of investors and people very familiar with the space, so be sure to join that. But we are running out of time. Ryan, if you want to do the question on the Q&A, and then we'll wrap this panel up, because we have a couple of the other panelists here, and I want to make an announcement on Colombia.
No, Karim, thank you very much. And no, only fair, I'll definitely be sticking around afterwards to hear more of this gaming panel. Guys, I've loved this discussion. Yes, let's break it for Q&A. I know we have many other speakers that we need to accommodate. I will say, though, that ultimately, I'm very just excited after hearing this conversation, because that really was my question. It wasn't, will this all work? It was, can it work? And Mitch and Dr. Lewis, you guys really gave some really astounding answers that have convinced me that, yeah, like you said, this is pretty inevitable. Ladies and gentlemen, if anybody wants to do any Q&A questions, happy to moderate that as we can, and we can get some awesome answers from our speakers up here.
So the question on the Q&A that is pending still is, as both of you are coming from the VC world and look at investable companies, how are valuations being determined today, and how do you do that? A little bit from Mitch, a little bit from Dr. Lewis.
So, I mean, it depends on the subsector within blockchain, obviously. So if you take something like an exchange, you would look at precedent companies because you can point to public companies such as Coinbase. Whereas if you're looking at a miner, you have to look at a different set of companies as well. I would say that and I'm trying to give specific answers here as well. If you are on a recurring revenue model, right, you can use a SaaS enterprise multiple. Again, that wouldn't apply to exchanges for certain instances. On the token valuation, I think the industry is still figuring it out, right? So there is the concept of revenue, right? So for instance, you have Ethereum, you have Bitcoin, they generate transaction fees. And so that actually gives you a sort of a PE value, but these are very nascent industries. So those are not as, well accepted as, say, the kind of multiples you would see in the public equity markets. So for instance, things aren't always trading, one blockchain might have a higher fee or PE ratio than another, but it's not really trading in the right way. So these are still kind of nascent markets working themselves out. But I would say in general, it is, venture capitalists are looking for businesses that scale on the long time frame. So you're investing in, typically SaaS revenue metrics.
Thank you.
So from my perspective, because I am a VC in this space, I'll tell you that the valuation of a company, making that valuation, having it be accurate, is very difficult right now because we have such instability in the cryptocurrency market. What was worth $67,000 and one bit cannot possibly be worth $17,000 and one bit. So what we have here is an interesting tokenomics that don't necessarily jive with blockchain values. I will say that when we look at a company and we try to determine value and we try to determine investment potential, we look at our founders first. We say, where have they been? What have they done? What does the scalability of this company look like? And then we make a best guess based on the current cryptocurrency market and how much of that project is tokenized. And it's not a clear answer, but that's because there isn't a clear answer in this really highly volatile token market right now. But basically, if we are talking to a founder and we cannot see the utility in what they're doing, or they do not have a track record that would lead us to believe that they can repeat success, then we will take a pass on that, and evaluation really becomes a non-issue for us.
Quickly then, the questions from Edward Brooks. Since you identify as blockchain, what is your take on other DLT, I suppose it's technologies, including hashgraph tech?
So I think Edward means by that, because DLT, distributed ledger technology, which blockchain is a DLT, I think he probably, since hashgraph, if he's referring to hashgraph, I think he believes more kind of private or permissioned blockchains. So I'll answer the question that way versus permissionless blockchains such as Bitcoin or Ethereum. Permissionless meaning that anyone can participate in the network, anyone can run a node, and they're completely public goods in a way, versus a private blockchain such as hashgraph or others. Maybe it's a series of nodes that are a small group where everyone's known. My opinion, and again, I'll try to answer these questions directly. My opinion is that those are far less interesting to me than the truly permissionless, fully decentralized applications of blockchain, because I just don't think that the implications for society are as large. I do think that there are some interesting use cases. I mean, Elizabeth brought up the idea of medical technology, medical records, or things like this. There are definitely use cases in which you would want to have a kind of known network of people sharing information that are maybe mutually distrusting. So for instance, as you have two private hospitals that want to share information, but they don't want to share all information because they're not under the same company. That could be an interesting use case of a permissioned blockchain. Lots of people have tried these ideas for the banking system as well, maybe a collective of banks that want to share information but are actually competitors. But in general, the public permissionless applications of blockchain I find far more interesting, because those are the truly true attempts at disintermediating transactions, right? So when you have a permission blockchain, it's not decentralized. In my mind, you haven't fully removed the person in the middle. So the potential there is capped in a way that it's not capped for something like Bitcoin or Ethereum.
That, to me, Mitch, don't you think that that's really more like Web 2.5? And what you and I are trying to do is soar past 2.5 into 3, but we're just not there yet. So for us, Web 3 is interesting. Web 2.5 is okay if we have to.
Although we do have to take baby steps, right, to get to Web 3.
That's
so
true.
There is an opportunity there. Yeah.
Applications of that, but I think as a VC, as Elizabeth said, and I think her answer on valuation was so good, is we're investing in growth, right? Like we want massive opportunities, new markets, and to me, the permission blockchain, there are some small use cases, but I don't understand why you wouldn't just use one company with a centralized database. That would be more efficient. So yeah.
So whoever is out there, listen to, if you want blockchain infrastructure technology, we have BlockDemon on our side. We're investors in that company. So take a look at that, see if that's interesting to you to invest in. And I know both Mitch and Elizabeth are making recommendations of other companies that Link2 should use to allow access so that we can bring more investment opportunities to our members. So continue to do that.